Good afternoon, everyone. Really lovely to have you joining us. We're just going to give it a minute to let everyone join and then we'll get started. Hi to everyone that's just joining us. We're just giving it a few more seconds to let people come into the room and then we'll get started. Fantastic. It is 12, so I think we'll jump straight in. So as mentioned, thank you all for joining us. It's great to see some familiar names here already. Today on the call with me, we have Sahil, my colleague. My name's Beth, and then we're delighted to be joined by some of the team from IG Advisors who will be introducing themselves shortly. Just go to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You'll see a chat function at the bottom of your Zoom panel. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this already, but please do use this to introduce yourselves. If you set the reply to everyone, everyone will then be able to see your message and you can share your ideas or any issues throughout the session here. You'll also find a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Please do use this to ask any questions. We'll be answering them throughout the session and at the end of the session, but please do put them in here so we're not losing them in the chat and we can make sure that all of your questions are answered. There will also be a couple polls throughout the session. They should just come up on your screen at the appropriate time, but yeah, please do let us know if for any reason you can't see them. And finally, you are muted. So again, please do pop those questions in the Q&A box. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you would like to share with your colleagues afterwards, you'll be able to do so when we upload to YouTube after the session. And of course, we're all here for the Women and Girls Match Fund, which is launching on the 10th of October in line with International Day of the Girl Child. And of course, we're super excited to have you all joining us and to raise lots of money for your amazing projects. Just a little reminder that all of the donations that you receive during the campaign, when that campaign is live, must come through your Big Give campaign page in order to be matched. So you want to make sure you're directing all of your donors and supporters to your Big Give campaign page during that campaign week. You should already have access to your campaign page, but if you don't, it sometimes means that for some reason you haven't uploaded bank details or they're not being approved yet. So please do get in touch with the Big Give team if for any reason you can't access that page and we can help you out. And we are running a series of webinars this week. One today, I believe the next one's tomorrow, and one on Friday. So very busy schedule. But if you haven't already, please do sign up and join us for those. We'll have lots of insightful information for you. But without further ado, I think I'll pass straight on to Caitlin and Charlie.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Beth. And thank you to everyone for joining today's call. We have an hour together today and it's going to be very, very interactive. So please do introduce yourselves in the chat, get to know each other. There's a lot more coming. And today's session, we're going to be focusing on fundraising strategy fundamentals. So we're going to be providing you with some tools, tips, support to plan your campaign and make sure that you're approaching it really, really strategically. We're from IG Advisors. We are a strategy and management consultancy, and we work with the philanthropy, business, and nonprofit sectors for social and environmental change. We work with a lot of women and girls and gender justice organizations, and we regularly produce fundraising strategies, trainings, workshops for the space. And just signal boosting Beth's comment in the chat. If you do need captions, you'll find an option for this at the bottom of your screen. So I'm Caitlin, I'm one of the advisors at IG. You might recognize me from past trainings, and I actually recognize a few of you on the line today, so it's so wonderful to have you back with us. And I'm joined by my colleague, Charlie, if you want to say hi.
Hi everyone, great to be with you today.
And in terms of what to expect, an hour today focused on strategy, and then tomorrow we'll be back again at 12 till 1, and that's going to be more focused on choosing your communication channels, crafting really compelling and engaging content. So lots of exciting stuff to come. Okay, and today's session, we are going to be focusing on, first of all, defining your targets for that campaign, your audiences for the campaign. This is really, really important to make sure that you're using your resource in a strategic, focused, and effective way. We're then going to move on to mapping. So we're going to map the assets that you have at your disposal, your networks, make sure that you're leveraging everything you already have access to plan a wonderful match fund campaign. And then finally, we'll do a bit of work on prioritizing and managing time effectively before jumping into Q&A. So if you have any questions as we go through, make sure you pop them in the Q&A box because we do want to get round to those. But before we dive in, I did promise this was going to be super interactive. So in the chat, I want you to type an emoji that summarizes how you're feeling when you think about the idea of your crowdfunding campaign. So 5 seconds to type the emoji, and then I'm going to do a countdown and we'll all click send. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send your emoji reactions. Oh, okay. I love the thinking face and the brain exploding emojis. They're very related. Wow, we have such a range. We've got some like heart eyes, Sahil's given me a smile, feeling really good about it. And then, yeah, a full spectrum of emotion. Well, I feel for all of you. Oh, Rachel says her emoji was meant to be nervous. Got it. Do not worry. Today, by the end of today's session, our aim is for all of those emojis to become big, huge smiles. So we've got this, everyone. Some confused emojis in the chat. So just to get down to basics, what even is crowdfunding? What are we even talking about today? So crowdfunding is basically kind of mass market fundraising. So you're asking a large number of people. And because you're going very mass market, you can also welcome smaller donations because they all add up to be this bigger donation. It often involves using online channels like social media for greater reach. But a kind of big thing we always remind people is go where your audiences are. And so you probably still want to be using your email. There might be offline channels that you use, such as events, coffees with key relationships. Those are all still on the table and really, really relevant and appropriate. And it's a time-bound campaign. There's a clear start and end, which is really, really helpful for fundraising because you can generate that urgency and that momentum. And we really encourage you to think about these kind of 3 stages. So the pre-campaign, which is where we're at now, and you want to do as much strategic thinking, preparation of materials, scheduling of posts, do as much of that as you can now because the live campaign period is very, very short. It's very, very fast. It's very, very reactive. So the more you can set yourself up for success, the better. Live campaign, as we said, it's going to be much more reactive. You're going to be giving people updates on where you're at with your targets. You're going to be responding to people's messages and posts on social media. And then post-campaign is really important, but often gets neglected. This is where you have a chance to evaluate what worked, what went well, what you do differently next time. But really, really importantly, thank your donors and keep those relationships going. So a lot to think about, but we're going to break it all down for you, so do not worry. So we're going to bring a poll up on screen now. And this kind of follows on from our icebreaker, just so we get a feel of where we're at. How confident do you currently feel about your Women and Girls Match Fund campaign? So are you number 5, super confident, ready to go? Are you kind of 3, I somewhat know what I'm doing, but I still have questions? Are you number 1, SOS, not confident at all, that like exploding brain emoji, send help ASAP? So 5 seconds to complete the poll. 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we'll have a look at the results. Okay, so even though we had a mix of emojis, it feels like a lot of you are in quite a good place, which is excellent. And hopefully then this is a session to just help you reaffirm that you're feeling good and fully equip yourself. Fantastic. Okay. And if you're not feeling so confident, do not worry. We are going to change that in just a second. So, Charlie, over to you to properly dive into everything.
Amazing. Thanks, Caitlin. So, hello again, everyone. We are now going to dive into beginning to define your approach to this campaign. So the first key piece of guidance we have in order to run a successful campaign is to first define what success looks like for you and for your organization. So what are your ambitions in the short term? In other words, by the time the campaign has ended or shortly after, and what are your ambitions in the long term? So thinking in a year from now, what does success look like for you? And also thinking about who you're looking to engage through this campaign. So we are going to visualize this for ourselves and for our organizations now. So a little exercise for everyone. We're going to imagine. So you can, if it feels good to you, you can close your eyes and imagine. But the scenario is the campaign has just ended and everything has gone brilliantly. And we want you to think about how you feel and what you have achieved as an organization that has made it so worthwhile. There's some ideas there on the screen, but feel free to imagine, dream about what success looks like for you. And we're going to give you a couple of minutes just to get thinking and get started on this. And you can pop any ideas and share in the chat if you'd like to. So just a couple of minutes to think about how you feel and what you've achieved just after the campaign has ended that made this feel so worthwhile. Wonderful. Okay, we've had a little bit of time to think. Has anyone got anything they would like to put in the chat? Any feelings? Imagining that this has gone brilliantly, I would imagine a sense of accomplishment and pride in the campaign that you have put together. We've got relief to be over. Yes, totally relate, and that is a-okay, but would feel appreciative of their support, knowing that they even want this to happen. Absolutely, totally relate to that. Thank you so much for sharing, Rachel. Okay, paves the way for a regular individual. Absolutely. A really good kind of feeling like you've started something. You've ended the campaign, but you've started your journey towards, for example, a more regular individual giving income stream. So love this manifestation, everyone. Internal buy-in. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good way to kind of prove your track record and success and ability to internal stakeholders and pave the way. Amazing. Okay. Please feel free to drop more ideas in the chat, but for the sake of time, we're going to move on to visualization number 2, which is thinking about more long-term success, as I kind of alluded to before. So imagine, again, feel free to close your eyes. It has been a whole year since the Women and Girls Match Fund campaign ended. And we would love you to think about what have you achieved since as a result, thanks to the campaign in that year. So again, just a couple of minutes drop anything in the chat that you would like to, and we'll check back in a couple of minutes. No worries, Louisa. It's a great one. We'll just give everyone else a few more seconds. And any achievements that anyone wants to pop in the chat, please do. Louisa, better awareness of your charity and your cause locally, definitely a really, really positive outcome that can come from campaigns like this. This funding create. Yeah, more awareness, long-term brand awareness and impact. Absolutely. Some really, really important and positive outcomes here. So, as I said, let's manifest. This will all come true for us all, for all of our organisations. Yes, absolutely. Better idea of how the Big Give works and a test. So a really good opportunity to kind of test new things, new approaches, and get a really good understanding of how you can maximise the Big Give campaigns. Wonderful. Okay, please do keep dropping things in the chat. But we're gonna move on to another quick exercise. So thinking about all of the things that we just imagined up in those last two exercises, we'd love for you to take just 30 seconds. I know it's very quick, but to think about what matters the most to you and identifying 2 to 3 priorities for your organisation. So your priorities for the Match Fund campaign out of all the things you just imagined. So we're going to just take 30 seconds now. Wonderful. Okay, I'm not going to ask you to share them. You're more than welcome to if you would like, but just want to highlight that these are going to be your guiding stars. So when planning your campaign, thinking about, is this a useful target for us to be using for our organisation, for our campaign? Is this test activity worthwhile for this campaign? You can come back to these guiding stars, these 2 to 3 priorities that you've just identified, or you go away and identify after this session. And that can really help you to decide if that is a priority action for you for this campaign. So amazing. We've just thought about our hopes and ambitions and dreams for this campaign. And it's great to keep those in mind and work towards those. But it's also really important that we really focus our ambitions and prioritize using some SMART goals. So SMART is a really good tool for us to focus our approach to this campaign. So we want to make sure that we are setting goals that are realistic in order to reach those big guiding stars. They can be financial, of course. In this kind of campaign, we're all going to have financial targets, but they can also be non-financial goals along the way, and they can be both short and long term. And just to kind of quickly move through the SMART acronym, I'm sure many of you are aware of what it means, but firstly, we want these goals to be specific. So in this context, that means avoiding kind of statements and goals like we would love to raise more money than last year, or we would love to do better than last year. It's not quite specific enough. So what can be really helpful there is attaching a number to that goal. We want these goals to be measurable. So measuring progress against your targets is super important to assess what works and what doesn't, especially when you're testing new approaches, as we kind of mentioned in the chat. So it's important to think about what needs to be measured, how it's going to be measured, and who's going to measure it. Goals should, of course, be ambitious, and we want everyone to be ambitious, but they should also be attainable and feasible for the capacity resource that your team has at the time. They also need to be relevant to your organization's mission and vision. And what's really, really key is making sure that those goals are also time-based. So they should always have a start and end date. And that's can be really useful as well for breaking things down and really sparking motivation and really gaining that sense of achievement. So there are some examples on the screen here of some SMART goals. So for example, the first one, unlock X pounds of ring-fenced match funding between the 10th and 17th of October. So we're going to assume that that is attainable and relevant to the organization's capacity and mission and vision. But you can see all of the other elements of a SMART goal are within that. So we would love for you to take 3 minutes now to start setting some SMART goals for your organization and to share one in the chat. So think about your guiding stars and how these goals are going to help you achieve those visions of success that you've set for your organization. So 3 minutes from now, and we'll check in. Amazing. I can see some of our SMART goals in the chat. Rachel, you've gone above and beyond and done all 3. Amazing. Yep, gain more sponsorship contacts in October. Could even make that more specific and identify a number if that would be helpful to your organization. There we go. Exactly. Oh, thank you, Caitlin. Produce and populate social media content by the 4th of October. Love that very time-bound specific date on that goal. Amazing. Any other SMART targets that anyone wants to share in the chat, please feel free. And of course, sometimes these things take a bit more time, so do take the time after this session, maybe with your team, if you feel that would be helpful, to really define these targets. Amazing. Seeing some great goals in there in the chat as well. Okay, so we have spoken about our guiding stars and what success really looks like for us. We've also spoken about how to make the journey to reaching those guiding stars a bit more defined and goal-oriented, and that's great. We also need to think about determining our audience in order to achieve those guiding stars that we have for our campaign and for our organisation. So we've highlighted some key audiences here, and what we would always advise across all of these audiences is that the match funding incentive of this campaign is one of the most valuable things to draw out and to highlight. So really make sure to emphasize that for a donor in all of these audiences, their donations will be doubled. And another thing that applies across all of these audiences is that to remember that there are people and humans in the teams behind all of these donor audiences. So at IG Advisors, we always encourage a relationship-based approach to fundraising, and that definitely applies in this case, in this context. So really try and think about building those relationships before, during, and post-campaign with all audiences. Okay, so just a little bit about each donor audience, so and why they are a benefit for this kind of campaign. So the general public, of course, there's lots of them. There's great potential for community building in the general public, and often everyday givers, household givers, members of the public are more open to emotional connection, which is great for campaigns such as this. However, one challenge with fundraising from the general public is that, of course, there are a lot of them, and therefore they tend to give on a smaller scale. So you need to engage a lot more people in order to reach the same kind of level of funding as you might achieve with 1 or 2 donors in a different donor audience. Foundations, of course, are a great donor audience. They have relatively deep pockets in most instances. They are often very clear on their website and in their materials about their mission, about their strategy, their priority areas, and what kind of work they like to support. And they can be quite agile and responsive at times. So also a great audience, but worth bearing in mind that, and I'm sure that everyone on the call is very, very aware of this, is that trusts and foundations are often oversubscribed, especially at the moment, and can be quite prescriptive about their priorities and restrictions. So just something to bear in mind there. Major donors are, again, a great opportunity, a great donor audience to consider. They have often large amounts of money. Their money is their own, so they are often the sole decision maker, and a bit more flexible with giving, and kind of less hoops to jump through, which means they can be a bit more flexible too. And also, similarly to the general public, they tend to be more open to emotional connection. So that storytelling piece in any crowdfunding campaign is super, super important. Of course, on the flip side, major donors tend to have less publicly available information than foundations. So their giving priorities, their areas of interest, and the amount of wealth that they hold is often more difficult to kind of understand. And it's really about that long-term relationship building that I just mentioned. So if you have a really loyal base of major donor supporters for your organization, really think about who within that network you can leverage for this Women and Girls Match Fund campaign. And finally, corporates. The kind of general assumption with corporates is that they have a lot of money, and of course that is true in some cases, in a lot of cases, but corporates are also often really willing to give in other ways. So volunteering, in-kind donations, space, and that kind of thing. And they're also driven somewhat by business interests. So a good audience to keep in mind, but just to remember that with corporates, it's often about that mutual benefit. So benefit for your organization, but also what the corporate is going to get out of that partnership with you. Amazing. So a brief overview. And within all of that I just covered, it's really important to think about who are we focusing on within those donor audiences. So what's the right kind of focus for your organization? Is it completely new supporters? Is it current donors? Is it lapsed donors that maybe haven't engaged with your work for a while and haven't made a gift in a while, that you really want to use this opportunity to leverage and re-engage them in your work? So it's really important to ask yourself who they are, what you know about them, how you're going to tailor your approach, where you might find them in order to engage with them. And we're going to go through these things in more depth tomorrow in our session on communications, channels, and content. So we'll dive into that in a little bit more depth and help you think about answering those questions. And a really useful tool for thinking these things through is developing donor personas. So I won't go through this in depth, but the general idea of developing a donor persona is to think about either a current or dream donor that you really want to engage through this campaign, and think about what you already know about them, what you know about their interests, what you know about their motivations, about where they engage with you, and maybe what they don't know about you, where the gaps are, and really use this as a kind of guide to mapping out your approach and messaging with them. Wonderful. Okay, lots of information. Hopefully very useful. And I'm going to hand over now to Caitlin to talk a little bit more about mapping.
Wonderful. Okay. We've done a lot already. It's been a whistle-stop speed round. So well done, everyone, for hanging in there with us. So we've identified our dreams for the campaign. We've set really smart, realistic goals for ourselves. We've identified the audiences we want to focus on. We've created donor personas to work out what makes them tick and what messaging and tools and approaches we want to use to reach them. Now it's time to make sure that we are leveraging all of our assets and our networks to basically save ourselves work. We are aware that very often there are lots of small organizations taking part in the Match Fund. Lots of you on the call today might be the sole person responsible for your Match Fund campaign. So it's really important to leverage all of the assets and people in your network that you already have to make your life as easy as possible and mean that achieving your goals is really feasible and realistic. So we're going to start off with an asset mapping exercise. So the point of this is to identify all of the organizational assets at your disposal for fundraising across 4 categories. So first of all, think about your organizational identity and strategy. Is there anything that makes your organization really unique? Is there any really effective part of your programming, of your approach, of your values, or your mission that is going to be really, really helpful to leverage and draw on for this campaign? Second of all, people and relationships. We're going to dive into this a lot in a second in our network mapping, but who is on your staff team that could help you with this campaign? Who is on your board of trustees? Do you have volunteers? And also externally beyond your organization, who are you connected to that might be a really valuable donor, but also potentially just advocate, soundboard, champion of the work that you do? Third area, comms and collateral. So what communication materials, donor pages on your website, social media, copy, testimonials, case studies, videos, what already exists that you can draw on and repurpose for this campaign? You do not need to create everything from scratch. We 100% encourage you to repurpose things that you already have. And then finally, environment and spaces. What spaces do you have access to? Do you have a really good in-person venue for events? What virtual spaces are you part of? Are you part of Facebook groups, mailing lists, newsletters that you can promote your campaign in? Think about all of these 4 areas. And we're going to dive into another exercise. So we love 3 minutes. I don't know why, but 3 minutes is the thing today. So it's to rapid fire brainstorm as many assets that exist in your organization across these 4 categories that could be helpful for your campaign. And your challenge is, by the end of the 3 minutes, I want every single one of you to have dropped at least one really, really cool asset that you have in the chat, because then that'll give inspiration to other people. So 3 minutes, time starts now. So Speedy, you're winning. Statistics, loads of data and stats to share. I love that, and especially for crowdfunding, being able to share kind of really punchy stats and infographics is hugely, hugely powerful and compelling. Everyone else, you have a minute left to drop the asset that you're most proud of in the chat. Thirty more seconds. Okay. We've got so many great things in the chat. Videos, 100%. As Charlie was talking about, that kind of emotional connection is really, really powerful. Oh, Rachel, it sounds like you have a great team and people that you can draw on, which is wonderful. I love that after Facebook. In tomorrow's session, we're going to be talking about different social media channels and whether or not it's worth spending time with them. So we will get back to that point. Case studies, Maeve, yes, 100%. Influencer partnerships, that is really, really helpful for a kind of crowdfunding online campaign. Oh, I love that, Marcia, an opportunity to reintroduce yourself through the Big Give campaign. And I also think as someone who's new to the organization, there's a really helpful external lens that you can apply to the messaging as an outsider. Does this resonate? Do your comms materials make sense? Okay, lots of wonderful case studies, quotes, testimonials. Shrina, again, it sounds like you have amazing networks, artwork, Wow. Okay. You are all so set up for success and prepared. I love that. So the purpose of this exercise is all of those assets you've identified, make sure you're using them. Make your life easier. Are there any gaps? You know, did you think about comms and collateral and you were like, oh, actually, we don't have a lot here? Then maybe there's a SMART goal in there about creating some materials to support your wider vision and hope for the campaign. Okay, onto network mapping. And this is kind of an extension of the asset mapping thinking you've already done around the people and relationships in your network. Network mapping is really, really helpful to work out who you have in your network who might be able to donate, make connections for you, offer you spaces, useful mailing lists, whatever else that might be. But B, it's also helpful if you have a dream donor in mind or a dream person who you want to be promoting and championing your cause, because network mapping will help you work out how you reach them and how you get to them. So there are 4 key steps to this. First of all, who are you trying to reach? Who are the key supporters you want to target through your network mapping? Step 2, who are you connected to? What events, what spaces are you part of that might be helpful for reaching that dream supporter? So for example, who are your colleagues, your trustees, your volunteers, your friends even? Do you have any influencers in your networks who could repost something and make it visible to this dream person? Number 3, what do you need from your connections? Do you need to be asking for an email introduction to someone? Do you want a coffee meeting? Do you want them to actually pitch something on your behalf and be a champion for you because it makes more sense for the relationship? Is it sharing something, tagging you on social media? And then the 4th thing to think about is what do your connections need from you to be able to support those introductions effectively? So do they need a one-pager about your campaign? Do they need a social media toolkit for posting about you? Do they need reassurance about the journey that you're going to take their contact on and reassurance that you're going to look after that relationship well? And we have a template which you're not going to fill in today, but you're free to take away and do for homework. And first of all, you have yourself and you map out all of the spaces that you're part of, all of the people you're connected to that might be useful for this campaign. So to give you an example, there's me, Caitlin, in the middle, and I'm going to think about where did I go to school? Where have I worked? What are my members of? Am I on a board of anything? My hobbies, this is a true story. I do Irish dancing and I found out that my Irish dance teacher is a grants manager at a really cool foundation, just randomly out of blue. So what spaces are you engaged in? And then you do the same thing for your prospect, for your dream supporter. And you keep going until you find areas of overlap. So you can see here, I've discovered that my friend Emily is friends with a feminist influencer that Charlie is following. So maybe I can get them to post about my cause on social media to make that connection. And final 2 minutes, because in the ethos of prioritizing time, I'm going to stick to our agenda for today's session. So final 2 minutes, speed through. How do you prioritize and manage time effectively? A key question that we get asked every year is, I'm a one-person fundraising team managing this campaign. This is in addition to my normal fundraising job. How do I find time for it? How do I do it? First things first, what actually matters? Always go back to your guiding stars that we established at the start of the session, because that's going to help you make sure that you're using your time effectively. Prioritize and say no. You do not need to be going after every single donor possible across every single donor audience. You do not need to be using every single social media channel in existence. Prioritize, and we're going to be talking more about that and helping you to prioritize communication channels tomorrow. Manage expectations, and having those really realistic SMART goals will be helpful for this. communicate your needs. The whole point of the asset mapping and the network mapping task is that you do not need to do this alone. There are so many people who can champion you, who can support you, who can bring in other donations. So let people know what you want from them. Prepare in advance. A big mistake we see is people leaving all of the content creation, all of the scheduling to the live campaign period. You only have a few days for the campaign, so do what you can in advance. Leverage your assets, leverage your networks, as we've just said, and look after yourself. This is the Women and Girls Match Fund. A core feminist principle is self and collective care. So you are all doing great just by virtue of being on this training call and taking the time to do all of this strategic thinking. So celebrate yourself, give yourself recognition, and also just rest and look after yourself, because it would not be in the ethos of feminism if you weren't taking care of yourself. Okay, we have a couple of tools which I'm not going to talk through because we introduced them at our training last year, so you can have a rewatch of that. But tech is your friend. There are lots of prioritization frameworks out there, like the Eisenhower matrix. So there are also really practical things that you can do to support yourself. Okay, bang on time. That is it. We're gonna move on to our Q&A segment now, and I'm gonna hand over to the Big Give team.
Thank you, guys. Beth, I don't know if you've seen any questions that have popped up.
Oh, there was one question from Iona that just came in actually, but that's just more around general campaign. So Sahil, you might be able to answer this one. Can people pay their pledge via check?
So, just to clarify, if you're talking about the donors who donate during the campaign week, they have to donate online via your Big Give campaign page. We take donations via credit, debit card, and Google and Apple Pay. And for donations of £500 or more, there is a backs donation option, which we have already emailed you about. We did email all charities this week as well if they want to add in more match funds to their own campaigns via the form of what we call pledges. So those have to be paid via backs or CAF transfers. Obviously, that's entirely optional if you want to add in more match funds to your campaign, but they have to be contributions from your own network. The match funds that we have awarded you is final.
Great, thanks, Sahil, and thanks, Caitlin and Charlie. I think you gave so many interesting, insightful lessons for everyone to take away that there's no questions. You must have explained it so well. Do you have any final top tips you think people can take away? If there's one thing you'd say to take away from everything you said today, is there anything that stands out to you?
Great question. I think I'm gonna be cheeky and say two things. I think the thing about looking after yourself, to run any successful campaign or to just do our jobs effectively, you need to first resource yourself to be able to resource your campaign. So do make sure you do that. And second of all, use those guiding stars, because how long is a piece of string? There is so much that you could do, but no one has the time for that. So use your guiding stars to really focus in on what's going to be most effective and make the most sense for you, I'd say. Would you add anything else or say anything else, Charlie?
Just kind of piggyback off that, I think the main thing that I would say is we have shared a lot of information, and it can feel, the emojis at the start, demonstrated a little bit of nervousness, potential for overwhelm in this process. There's a lot of information, but as Caitlin just said, you do not have to do all of it. You can pick what is most important to your, to achieving those guiding stars for your organization. And as we outlined at the beginning in the chat, you know, sometimes it's just about testing new approaches and trying new things, rather than getting everything 100% perfect and right, and doing everything all at once, especially with limited resource. So give yourself grace to prioritize and be comfortable with not doing everything.
I
Great.
think so. Oh, go ahead,
we-
Sahil.
I was going to say, we do actually have two more questions that have popped up. First from Rachel saying, can we do a sign vlog before the campaign starts to explain to the deaf community what is coming up, why we're doing this, etc., and donate at the right time? Any thoughts? I don't know if IG, you've seen any charities with donors with hearing or sight impairments that have done anything bespoke for their supporters?
I love the idea of the vlog, Rachel, if it's within your capacity to do. And I think to your point about doing it before campaign starts, there is so much, it isn't that you have to be quiet until the start of the campaign. You can begin, you know, having conversations, reaching out to people, preparing materials, putting materials out there in advance. Obviously, the main thing being, make sure you tell people to donate during the campaign period. But definitely worth thinking about what are you communicating about before campaign starts. And also thinking about the key communities that you want to leverage. And I know, Rachel, one of your goals was strengthening the relationships you have with the deaf community. So it sounds like that blog could be a really nice way of doing that.
Great. And we have one more question in the chat, which is any tips, advice building a donor base when most of your donors stay anonymous when giving?
Good question. So I would say often, even if a donation is anonymous, you'll hopefully still have some information about have they donated to a particular thing, what channel did they donate through? So, you know, for the sake of this match funding campaign, you'll know that they've donated through the Big Give website. You'll know they've donated during this campaign period. And there's a lot of really interesting data you can get from that, right? Like, oh, maybe they heard about our campaign through social media, or maybe like the match funding tool is a really, really useful one for this audience. So I think about the data that you do have and what that tells you. And I'd also just say you're not the only person thinking about that question of anonymous donors and how you maintain that relationship, but use the data that you do have and think about how are you stewarding that relationship? Can you get involved in other Big Give Match Fund campaigns in future? Can you make sure that you're posting about the impact of the campaigns on social media? So hopefully there'll be ways to get information through to them in some shape or form.
And I would just say as well, I know that sometimes when donors are giving anonymously, it might not be the case for your organisation, but sometimes there is one key contact within the organisation that might know who that person is. My understanding of how this works with the Big Give is that people can give anonymously, right? So you could...
Well, we show all of the donor names in donation reports. It's just whether you can contact them or not then.
Okay, interesting. I was gonna say that maybe you could leverage that for a kind of like someone has pledged X amount, but potentially not the best idea if you have to name them in the report.
Great. And Maeve has a very broad question. Any tips on how to engage new donors in particular through the Big Give?
Yeah, so I'd really think about like, who are these new donors that you're looking to engage? Do that donor persona exercise that Charlie shared, because that's gonna, like, new donors is so broad. So who are the new donors that you're looking to engage? What do you know about their motivations, where they engage with you? Who do you have that's connected to them? And then all of your kind of your decisions around what communication channels you use, what messaging you put out there, who you speak to kind of make an introduction or reshare your posts or whatever that might be, can flow from that identification of the donor persona that you're trying to target. That would be my advice.
I'm going to plug our session tomorrow as well, and just say that we will definitely have more tips on the kind of next step of how to engage new donors, whoever those are for you, through channels and messaging.
You guys, Sadie has asked, can I ask the donor form includes the organization field? This would help us identify who are partner donors and who are individuals. Unfortunately, we don't currently have that option available. So when donors are making donation, we just ask them to literally put in the details which are shown on their payment card. We are hopefully in the future, as part of our product roadmap, to have let donors leave messages on their donation. So that will be available hopefully in the future, in next year's campaign. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's just because we donors have a 30-minute time limit to make a donation. We want to make the donation form as efficient as possible for them. So we just ask them what are their card details, and that's what we show in the donation form to you. But we will take that feedback on board for when we are making changes to the donation form in the future. I think those are all the questions. I don't know. I'll hand back to Beth in case you've seen anything, or we can wrap up.
I think we could probably wrap up as there's no more questions that have come in, and we'll finish a couple of minutes early. But I just want to thank Caitlin and Charlie again for a really engaging session, lots of food for thought and things to take away. And just a reminder for everyone else that this session has been recorded. We'll be uploading it on YouTube later today, and we'll also make the PowerPoint slides available in the Trello board that you can access via your Big Give Charity portal. But in the meantime, we hope you have a lovely rest of the day, and we look forward to just seeing some of you tomorrow as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.